All right, Mike. We want to hit some hot points. This first one is the crack today, a crack in the Earth's magnetic field. According to reports, it says that this crack was so large that it allowed solar winds to just go pouring into the Earth, as well as, I guess, charged particles and radiation and what have you. But what does it mean, a large crack, a massive crack in the Earth's magnetic field, and what caused it?
Well, that means it's a change of the field paths of that all the magnetic lines of force, electromagnetic lines of force. They deviated from certain sections of the Earth, so they left it wide open, which means any high-speed particles can come in there unabated and just smack into the Earth. That is caused by an external force that's on the moon, on the Earth, on Mars, on Venus, on Jupiter, on everything, and it's causing somewhat of a chaotic type of it's giving a bit of chaos to the structure we normally have in our magnetic field lines of force. In fact, some of the orbits are beginning to alter. The moon's wobble, in fact, is caused by an orbital change. The moon no longer orbits the way it used to. And the Earth is also changing. But also Mars is beginning to deviate in its orbit. They have observed Jupiter's orbit. Very minute because they're so far out. They have observed that Jupiter's orbit is also beginning to alter. As big as it is, it's altering. They're noticing so many things that the day is arriving, past Paul, when so many things are going to come together and people have actual, they'll be able to see the specific changes. They're trying to save face. And what I mean by that is they're trying to backpedal on everything. Think about it. You bring out a map, right? You brought up that subject of the map. And of course, I put something out there and then all of a sudden maps are coming out from all types of agencies.
You're right. Yep.
So what they're trying to do is because, not this isn't to give Pastor Paul a big head or anything, but Pastor Paul, they consider you one of the influencers now, meaning you're no longer one of the small guys, right, in the media. You're one of the voices in the media right now. So, and having said that, what I'm saying does not necessarily reflect upon the ideologies of the DoD, but my opinions are mine. I'm supposed to say that every single time I talk. Anyway,
okay.
So you're considered a little more influential, and the reason why is because the information you have been collecting and some of the shows you've been doing have been drawing attention of very serious people who have very serious concerns. And they also have they're far-reaching. So we're not talking about people who are going to come out and get you. We're talking about folks who are taking an interest in your ministry as far as what's happening in the world. And so in a lot of cases, people may not know this, but they use ministers to capture the pulse of the people. Really? Ministers often, they will gauge a minister to see what they can and cannot get away with concerning the people. So you're one of those voices now to be observed.
I guess... this is new information for me to hear you say that. So apparently you've got some information on that and on me and on, of course, you're on here and you, like you said, you need to say your opinions is not that of the DoD, and that's good. You do that. It's your own. But you're saying that I'm being watched not because I'm being hunted down or anything, but because they're interested in the outreach and interested in the opinions of the evangelical people, or all the people that watch and listen. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. So things are really changing out there. They often do this because they really need to know what people desire, what people are feeling, what direction people will go, and what they're going to go for and what they won't go for. So if they can get the mind of a minister who normally has the pulse of the people, well, then they engage what they have to do and how they have to engage the people. The government right now, they understand that they're disconnected from the entire populace. It's almost like nobody wants to hear what anybody has to say in Washington.
Right.
And it's true that 96% of the people have, since the beginning of the year, they're listening to alternative media. They're not listening to mainstream media. A lot of people fell out And there's a lot of recovery going on. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that they're just not telling, because their ratings have just zeroed at bottomed out big time. They're losing money big time. And so we have a change in everything right now. People are hungry. They want to know what's happening. They're starting to see things. Number one, there's some very serious people, very positioned folks who on a daily or weekly basis now, they encounter something that deals with either lights in the sky or entities. Do you know that? This is once per week, and it's really beginning to disturb quite a few people. They don't know that they're taking another look at everything, and so they don't need a repetitive talking individual who's just gonna read notes and say what they want said. They need folks who have spiritual insight.
So let's talk about that for a minute, and let's talk about this alien or UFO or aerial phenomenon that's going on. So they're interested in our understanding of it, our perspective of it, the biblical point of view, and like you said, it's happening now on a daily basis. Heidi was just telling me this evening about a black triangle sighting somewhere. I forgot what you said. Was that, Heidi? In Galveston, Texas.
Louisiana.
And also in Louisiana. It might have been the same one. We're hearing about these all over the world. And then today, excuse me, I ran across, people are starting to wonder what happened after the flood. Where did these Nephilims, where did these giants go? They resurfaced in different parts of the world, including North America, Central America, South America, and of course the Holy Land. And I was looking, and I seen where the Apache, the Navajo, and the Hopi Indians all believe and have taught that their ancestors actually came from the heart of the earth. They came out of the earth and came up and then started dwelling on top. And they put this on the glyphs on the rocks. Is there something going on here, Mike, when the Bible says they search through heaven and the earth and under the earth? Is there some type of alien entities or some type of demonic entities or some type of hybrid that are in the earth, and are they starting to resurface again?
Yeah, they're in Genesis 6. It says there were Nephilim in the before the flood and also after that. So it was very clear that Nephilim were in the earth after the flood also. That's right. In Genesis 6, just in case anybody disputes that. Then of course, all these wars they fought, that like Joshua and all those guys, they were really in a fight against those who were hybrids in the earth. They were told to take down their kingdoms one by one. They were hybrids, and so all these kingdoms that they were fighting had corrupted flesh. Meaning, corrupted flesh is not. I know a lot of people. This is one of those subjects that confuses people, but we're not talking about corrupted DNA. We're talking about a corrupted union of spirit and flesh. Man is born with a spirit in his flesh already. It's like a nagging, talking spirit in your flesh already. But with the fallen angels, it was twice corrupted. It was just terrible. It was a union of angels and flesh, which is forbidden because it yields something different.
So it's worse than the original sin in the garden. It's a double dose. It's like a double portion of corruption.
It's very bad. So and then that's why Christ. I try to remind people he didn't come to save our flesh. He came to save our souls.
Amen.
Our flesh is doomed. That's why it has to pass away or be changed. But anyway, besides that point, these Nephilim, just like us, different races, different sizes, but they also, when they mated with mankind, darkness is chaos, and chaos is a potential of everything without order. Right? God hasn't given darkness order, so it is nothing but the promise of everything. That's what darkness is. That's my definition of darkness. So once God gives it order, we come about. We have ordered and structured human bodies with purpose. God's order is also purpose. Darkness is chaos. It can be everything, but it's nothing. It always has potential to be everything. This translates into the flesh. Now, when you start dealing with structure, Nephilim had lots of different structures. I don't believe dinosaurs lived, billions of years ago or millions of years ago. I don't believe that. I just don't believe that. There's too much evidence against that. I don't believe that.
Okay.
I do believe that all these bones and everything else that scientists find, they had to find some type of way to justify what they were finding. Often with dinosaur bones, at least 20% of the bones are never included in the final structure because you can't put those bones in there. Somebody would say, hey, are those vocal cords of a human being, right? You can't display sandals that are 46 inches long with the toe, the toe prints in there where it's been worn down.
What?
Right? You can't display a bunch of
inches
2-ton,
toe?
a bunch of 2-ton axe handles. Can you imagine a 2-ton axe where the handle is worn down by
that's
hands?
4,000 pounds.
Huge.
Mike, that's 4,000 pound handle.
Well, there you go. And also these things that they're doing. So one of the first secret things that people did was start to hide archaeological finds, especially here in America. America was basically untouched. It was inhabited by people who lived in union with the land. Now, you said they were coming out of the ground. That was when they re-emerged.
Right.
One of the long stories of these Native Americans is that, here's what they all say. All cultures say this same thing. Serpents came from the skies.
Yeah.
Mated with the women, right?
Yeah.
When the child, the woman, if the woman survived, the child would be born, and that child at a specific age would be taken up. He'd be missing for years, and when he came back down, he was a king. He was appointed a king or leadership in the world. They were also promised, like the Mayans, they were promised 1,000-year reign. Some of the Hopi individuals were promised 1,000-year reign. All these tribes had promises over them, but they dealt with things we did not deal with. Right? We didn't deal with that stuff.
No.
When they came over here, if you start digging through documents, you'll find out that the founding fathers, they had protocol when dealing with certain things they would find. They had a lot of supernatural encounters. Not all of them were angelic, right? Not all of them dealt with prophecy. No. They had some other encounters, very scary things. And they had to deal with all these different stories of wars, and the Indians would teach them how to live side by side in certain territories man was not allowed to go into because of the hairy people. The hairy people, I know people call them Bigfoot, but the hairy people, there were tribes of them here, right? Tribes of them. And there are 3 different types of hairy people. One is a charcoal-skinned human being, right? That's very robust and strong, but about the same height and size we are. And they normally stand the shadows. The other ones were about 14 feet tall, and they don't. In fact, this is a true story. There was a certain place in the United States of America, and I'm going to tell you where it was, but some of the Army folks were told, if you see one of these things, do not engage, because there have been accidents with soldiers concerning these things. Imagine that one.
Wait a minute. Time out. Whoa. Okay. Are we talking Bigfoot here? I mean, we're talking Sasquatch?
Or you can call it that. You can call it a
big hairy guys,
14. That is, But the funny part is, you ask yourself, why can't you see them? Well, a good description of them is some type of creature with translucent hair, right? Their hair is not normal. It's kind of like a fishing line, right? So if they stay still, you can't see them. Think about a bobcat. Yeah. Right? We know bobcats exist, but hardly anybody's ever seen a bobcat.
Hardly ever, no. They're real
hardly ever. In fact, most of the animals, there are a lot of animals people they know exist through other people, but they themselves have never seen one. Right. There are hunters who have never seen certain animals out there. So when you're talking about conversations about things that are not supposed to exist, just remember, nobody is seeing, we don't see animals that everybody talks about.
Are we talking about the North?
Some intelligent creatures.
Okay, now was these soldiers like in Washington State or somewhere? I mean, are somewhere up there?
I can't tell you where they were, but they were given a warning not to engage. I have a belief behind that, right? Okay. I have a belief. In the Bible, there were 2 sons. One was hairy, one was not. The one that was hairy was a masterful person for hunting. Yep. He was very robust and strong, and he scared people. His presence scared people. He was described as being very different, very strong. Everybody feared him, right? He went and had tribes in the earth, but those tribes stayed in the wooded areas. It is my firm belief that there is a genealogy that still continues to this day of those tribes. That's what I believe.
Well, because he was redheaded. He was redheaded. He was hairy. He was a hunter, Esau, and then Jacob took care of the sheep. And so, the Kandahar giant, that was legends, and Eli Marzulli, of course, went and interviewed the guy who shot the thing multiple times, and then some of the pilots that took helicopters to haul it out there on huge nets. I mean, whether that's true or not, these guys seem to be very legitimate. I've seen the art. I've seen the thing. Anyway, the bottom line is this: what you're saying, Mike. There are some entities out there. For instance, there's bears in Florida. Okay, black bear. Now, I've seen one in all my life in Florida. Although there is a lot of them in Florida, very hard to see a bear. Okay, so that's your point. Some things can hide in plain sight. And these entities may have that capability. So, wow.
That's right. So you have things all over the place. In this day that we live in right now, the Bible is quite clear that we're dealing with other things. Now, I normally don't talk about anything I have no personal knowledge of, right? I may throw a hint of it secondhand, but I'll tell you something, Pastor Paul. There are things out there you cannot unsee. Once you've seen them, your world is no longer the same. And everybody ought to thank God that they haven't seen them. Please don't be one of the people, ladies and gentlemen, that say, Lord, please show me so-and-so. Don't do that to yourselves. Because if you happen to see something, you're done for. Your life is going to change. You're going to have to deal with that for the rest of your life. If you're not strong enough internally with your faith, you're going to be all over the place.
Is that what's happening now with more and more alien encounters and UFO sightings? Do you feel that that's because there's more people on the earth now, the more chances of people having an encounter? And I guess maybe these entities are wanting to be more prevalent. I'm not sure. I'm going to ask you another question. We talk a lot about, what's that, Heidi? I have a question. Oh, Heidi has a question. Hang on a second.
I'm getting several reports that supposedly weather satellites are down. Is that
We're getting several reports, Mike, that several weather satellites are down. Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, there was a problem yesterday. Yesterday and the day before, and there were some outages. Everybody found out there were some outages of ISPs, internet service providers, could not handle the traffic in their specific areas. Something happened in California.
Okay,
that's where it happened. Something happened in California. That was the provisional network group that allots space to all these different avenues for internet connectivity. Something took place in California. Now, what they call it, that's on them, but it took place in California. I'll also say this: we have a very vulnerable system, because not only did it affect certain websites and certain bank transactions and the POP service, which are email, but it also affected parts of the power grid. There were sporadic outages on the power grid because of network problems. That was big news to me when that happened, because the power grid is controlled by a bunch of switches. Those switches are controlled by a computer. Those computers are normally kept offline from the public internet so that they can keep the power grid up, right? They're networked together. Something intruded, something was evasive, something took place, and people lost power for no reason whatsoever, not to replace a transformer, not to replace a pole, not to replace a power line. They just lost power. So you had actual power stations, Pastor Paul, that no one flipped the big breakers on. They have to lift with a crane. They just stop. So the main feeds, there's only one way that can happen. That happens underground, and that's controlled by a computer. Something breached by radio, something in the U.S. So we've got some issues here. We have a complex digital system, and when you're working with digital devices, there's an architecture in digital devices. You can hack by radio, any computer, just about anything. You can also, computers don't work too well in space, if you use a common clock inside the processor. So they found this out the hard way in certain space missions. And still, in the space missions they're in, they stay within the confines of the Earth's magnetic field. They are weary to go outside of that magnetic field unless they are in one of the USSS craft out there. So, but they're not going to breach the field if they're in something like the ISS or one of these ships that Elon Musk takes up or something like that. Yeah.
So excuse me, someone's interfering. Are we dealing with China here or Russia, or are we dealing with an enemy, a foreign nation enemy, or are we dealing with something beyond that?
Well, here we go. The U.S., yesterday people noticed because they couldn't access the internet. They couldn't access certain services. 2 days prior to that, no one really took notice. 2 days prior to that, no one really, they didn't think about the data breaches that happened in the USA concerning some of the largest product providers in the world, basically. No one seemed to matter with the FedEx main hub. It went haywire. The UPS hub went haywire a week ago. So we've had these attacks, these so-called attacks on our grid that they're normal, but there are new tactics being used that are quite intrusive into most of the networks that we have, which makes us very vulnerable. And I suspect that all this is, you asked the question, who's doing it? Well, you mentioned Russia and China. Do you know about the new deals with Russia and China?
No, I don't.
Okay, Russia and China and Iran, they are one and the same. Here's why I say that. Russia and China are doing drills together. Iranians are on the subs, battleships, and everything else in China. We're talking about a lot of trained officers that are being trained on battleships and real exercises by the Russians and by China. Russia or Iran is all over the place right now. Some of the equipment, Chinese and Iranian, is designated, or Chinese and Russia is designated for the Iranians. So you may see the Chinese emblem, you may see the Russian emblem, but they belong to Iran. And what I'm saying is, some of the ships that the Chinese are driving, right? The Chinese are not in command of those ships. Iran is. I'm telling you, that's a huge force.
That's unbelievable. All right, Mike, what you're saying is that the Iranians, the Chinese, the Russians have really signed a pact with the devil, basically. They're working together in tandem to further some type of communism or totalitarianism. I mean, aren't the Chinese and the Russians really setting in Cuba right now? I mean, aren't they taking that nation over?
Of course they are. They've already, they were already in the oceans.
Yeah.
And so it seems like they just popped up on land. They are very good at doing what the Mossad used to do in the Middle East, which is we do it too. Sometimes to gain land, you have to go and disturb the bees. And once you do that with the bees, you start taking control where the people deem the breakdown is. And then of course, for them, they'll reinstall communism. Because at the heart of their hearts, right, they like communism. Even this new socialistic movement that people see all over the world is nothing more than communism.
Yes.
Is what it is. We have a republic, unfortunately. It's in such decay right now, and really in a degraded condition that a lot of people, they don't know what socialism is. They don't know what communism is. All they know is that, they'll say, well, why do we need the government? We can do it ourselves. But we don't have a proper historical context of how things were established. People have no respect for this country more and more because they don't understand what it took to build it. And they don't understand the sacrifices. It's just like anybody's family out there. One of those parents is going to have to go out and work and do the hard stuff just to make it for that family. Somebody's got to make the sacrifice. So you have these three countries who have literally, what these accords that were in the Middle East, right?
Yeah. Yes.
The Abraham Accords, right?
Yeah.
Well, do you know about? Let's see. There's an arch enemy in the Bible, right? One of the kings. There is another type of accord being spoken of right now, tonight, right now in the Middle East. And with breakneck speed, they're establishing a different accord. Now, the name is going to imply the end result of it. The name is not a holy name. The name is one of those names that the Lord, took down. So there's another type of accord in the Middle East. In fact, it is
like Babel, like a Babel accord or some kind.
Well, but think more like a ancient king, and then
Nimrod. Nimrod.
But the accord piece is at the end of it. The name implies exactly what's going to happen. Now that means the Abraham Accords they're being crunched, and then they're going to be taken over, renamed.
Yeah, is it sort of like a Nebuchadnezzar Accord, some type of global accord in the Middle East?
Yeah, sometimes like that. But they're forging it in hard spots tonight. The reason why is because China has given a couple deadlines. Russia is you haven't heard Russia in the news lately?
No, they're quiet.
They're not
in
the news lately. That's never good when Russia's not in the news.
No.
Because if they're in the news, they're in one of those playful moods. If they're not in the news, I tell you something, they're really planning.
Yeah, could it be the King Ahab? Could it be the King Ahab Accords? I don't think so, but Nebuchadnezzar, I think he was the king of Babylon, and Okay, let me ask you a question.
You'll see it once that pops out, and everybody gets familiar with that term basketball. You'll see it clearly.
Okay, now, Mike, the government. We know that Hitler, that he conferred with the occult, that he worshiped Lucifer, that he summons the demons to give him supernatural power, supernatural inventions with the fallen ones or whatever, to give him weapons of war and plans of war. We know this true. And he was promised 1,000-year kingdom, just like you said some of the others were earlier. So we know that's happened. We know that President Dwight D. Eisenhower met 3 times with some type of galactic federation, some type of 3 different species of aliens in 3 different locations. I'm going to be asking Laura Eisenhower about that in this upcoming webinar. She's already shared that with us once, but I'm going to ask her to go into detail what was the significance of those 3 meetings. She'll tell us where they happened, the date, and the type of species. What does that mean? I want to know more about it. We're mankind's admitting those interactions. I'm asking you a question, Mike, and you probably know the answer. Has the United States government ever interacted with angels? Do we ever talk to the angels, the good guys, and ask them what we should do as a nation?
You know what? We've been warned. We've been duly warned. And the entire earth was shown a demonstration for the unbelievers. And so, that's happening. To my knowledge, to my visual knowledge and working knowledge, that happened twice. Once, when all the nuclear weapons everywhere in the world, when they were first taken down, the target data was changed to whatever capital that nuclear weapon was to go to, right? It was all changed. It was changed in a split second. That's when all the defense computers and everything else went down. Well, they had received the warning spiritually by several men in the U.S. and just about every single country had contacted the government and told them, gave them that warning before it ever happened, and then it happened. So they were contacted by pastors and ministers. They were, and then
prophets.
It happened. Well, it happened prior to that too. It happened. I know the story's a little mixed up because it happened so long ago, but during the days of Kenneth Arnold, when there were no constraints on development of everything like craft and jet power and all this stuff we were finding, we were given a warning. Russia was given a warning around the same time. Everybody was given a warning right before the crashes began. They were given a warning not to be deceived, They were told to stay steady, to continue to spread the messages of faith, but to stay steady, and do not invite the lust of technology into your lives. Don't negotiate with deceivers, is what they were told. But they were given this message over and over again, and nobody can deny it, but it was ignored. And so several meetings took place after that with deceivers, basically. Those are deceivers, which is why they have so many different forms. They are just inherent
Oh, they
deceivers.
can come. They can transform themselves into the angel of light.
Oh yeah,
They can a lot of different
deceivers.
forms.
And man was given that warning. Not only were they given a warning by supernatural means, but they were also given a physical warning because something stepped right to them. Something invaded all the radio signals, every signal you can imagine, and told them, don't trust the deceivers because they were coming. And but we didn't listen. And from there, some rumors began, right? The alien topic went off the charts, but it happened anyway. And sure enough, what had happened was we were so lustful for technology, for the ability to make something we could destroy man with. And that's why the root is so evil, because with all technology, they really want the technology so they can destroy somebody else, so they can control somebody else. So they want all that in their hands, and they were willing to do anything to receive it. Just think, for the UFO topic, hundreds of thousands of people died.
Yeah.
Because they were talking about the UFOs. I think the number is real close to millions, but it was certainly hundreds of thousands of people died.
When you say they died, were they assassinated by the government?
They were killed. Yeah, they were killed. These are hundreds of thousands of people that were killed. We had, so, in the news back then, when somebody had a heart attack, went missing, this, that, and the other, it was because they were talking about that subject. And why was it so secret? Because at that time, we were still in a Cold War, right? In the beginning of a Cold War, but Russia had they had the exact same warning we had.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but they didn't listen. They didn't listen either. And as a consequence of that, they went a little further than what we did. They actually employed things that they found from the Germans, because they were a little better with technology than the Germans, believe it or not, a long time ago. Russia was. And of course, that's why we used their spacecraft, and our shuttle program went down. We started, we branched off and we made something else. Anyway, to make a long story short, yes, we've had lots of encounters with authentic angels.
So when you think about it,
always announce themselves.
Yeah, that's another point. You've made that before, that an angel will always announce itself. It doesn't come deceptive. So that's why George Washington, during the Revolutionary War, said, I was visited by an angel. He appeared to me and he said who he was. And then he gave him these visions of what was going to come upon the nation. Even Abraham Lincoln talked about being visited by an angel. And these angels announce themselves each time. Everywhere in the Bible that an encounter with an angel takes place, they announce what they are. Although Paul did say we may entertain angels unaware. Maybe it's because we're not in condition to listen. Maybe I don't know the answer to that question. But one thing's for sure, Lucifer will transform his ministers or his fallen ones into angels of light, and they will come deceptive, and that's going on right now. I think it's fascinating that you said that, yes, our government, Russia's government, I'm sure some of the other governments like China and others have had these same encounters where God is trying to warn them, don't go there, don't go there. And didn't Jesus say that he would have to shorten the days for the elect's sake, lest there be no flesh saved? Is it possible that we go too far, Mike, with our technology, that we would destroy ourselves if God doesn't intervene?
Well, on that, the nuclear weapons right now that's not the real danger of the earth. But nuclear weapons are not the real. Pastor, there are weapons out there, Pastor Paul, that can target. Say, for example, if they can cause a reaction or send out some type of a big pulse, right? That would actually disintegrate your kidneys and everybody else's kidneys within a 1,500-mile radius.
No,
they don't. It doesn't really. In this world, you don't have to make a noise to get to somebody, right? Only you have nations like. North Korea, for example, right? They might launch a nuclear weapon because they don't have their hands on that higher technology. But as America and China and Russia has perfected magnetic theories to a high degree, meaning they know about frequencies of the body, not this etherical stuff that you read on the web that could not be true. Be careful with that stuff. But we have weaponry that you can't hear. Animals can always hear them, right? They'll always hear them. So if they're ever used, animals will hear them. But They have weapons that can actually melt your flesh within seconds. They can target specific organs, right? They can cause massive heart attacks to whomever they want. They can, if they really wanted to get someone, they don't have to struggle to do that. They don't. And there are other weapons still that they can leave there. And the effects within an hour is that everybody who is experiencing this or whatever goes on, when that thing goes off, it's going to melt the soft tissue all throughout their body. And all that tissue, the soft tissue of the human body, can be melted a fraction of a second through a means that hardly makes a noise. So we have some very deadly things out there.
All right. And we know that men's eyes and their tongues are going to fall out of their sockets while they still stand on their feet. We can read that in Ezekiel 38:39. And so we got some horrible stuff out there. All right. I move gears for a minute because this story is huge. They've updated the tsunami map out in California. It's been 12 years since they've done it. They've used whatever the science mechanisms that they use and sensors and info that were fed, that now the biggest risk zone, if there's a major earthquake in Alaska, the 9.2 earthquake that hit Alaska in 1964, if that happened again, that for some reason the tsunami wave would come crashing right into the San Francisco Bay. It would wipe out Oakland, San Francisco, and the surrounding areas. This is something it didn't do in 64, although it did cause damage there. Also, they're saying if another 9.0 hit Fukushima, Japan, it would do massive damage in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm going to ask you, is it because the poles are shifting, or is it because the ocean floor is changing due to all of this volcanism? Can you tell me why there would be this drastic channel right into the San Francisco area?
The ocean floor is not the same anymore, Pastor Paul. It's just not the same. And with all the volcanism happening all over the earth underwater, I'm telling you, it's a nightmare. In fact, in the Pacific Ocean, I give it maybe a day or two. I'm wondering if any pilots are going to spot something, because it's so brilliant in certain spots because of volcanoes. If you're up in altitude, you can have relatively, you can see some miles, they're going to notice the entire oceanic glow. It's going to be glowing. It's going to be glowing. And then the North Atlantic Ocean, it's only a matter of probably weeks before ash begins to spew out of the North Atlantic. So we have underneath the waters is so incredibly active. The Indian Ocean's another place where it's incredibly active. And there's some, monsters in that area where I was. Papua New Guinea is one of the target places. It's almost like a trigger point for quite a few things. And there's some monsters just right there. And some of the Australian authorities, they know about it. Indonesia knows about it. In fact, I have a belief something very special for Indonesia. Well, it's not special. It's terrible, but it will likely culminate into a conflict because they're going to need some help pretty soon. All these places who have weak points that have been exploited, they're going to need help very soon. And of course, I'm watching the West Coast only by activity of the Coast Plate, which is Mexico and South America driven. Yeah. So I'll say that again. You remember when I said this a long time ago about Mexico, when volcanoes will go off in Mexico, right? And in South America, when things tectonically would begin to happen, and it would coincide with something at the border, right? Well, here we are. Isn't that funny? Here we are. And then, Pastor, I have to tell you this, because you speak about, or we're speaking about California and that map. I'm telling you, you have an audience that extends beyond what you think. And there's some very concerned folks out there.
Yeah.
Right? So when they hear a subject or something like that, they're going to take secondary looks and say, "Hey, we have to say something," because the policy has been just don't say anything, keep your job, and let things go on as usual. But it's becoming so just so unusual. I'll put it that way. Things are so unusual.
Well, it's dangerous. I mean, it's becoming to the point now where humanity is about to face catastrophes on a biblical scale.
They are, and for it's going to be trying for a lot of people. But yes, that is the case. The West Coast, Pastor Paul believed this. I believe that the West Coast is going to, when they start smelling things, okay, then there's going to be a real problem.
Methane?
When they, I was I believe it will come from the ocean. It could be methane, but
Sulfur?
I think it'll be mixed with a sulfuric type smell. I believe that's going to indicate that in the ocean, something gave way. They have been tracking something in the ocean, a formation in the ocean, that if it goes, there's no hope for California, right? It's almost like California is held up right now by grace alone, really, by grace alone.
Wow.
And sometimes it's just like some of the rocks in Arizona that are on these tiny little, you see a tiny little peak of a rock holding up a big boulder on top. You say, how's that thing still up there, right? California is much the same way. Through the shiftings of this earth is shifting. This earth is shaking.
Okay, so we're going to Isaiah 24. You know, I was on the Jim Baker show last week, and it actually airs tomorrow morning. And Jim says to me, okay, this Isaiah apocalypse. And I read Isaiah 24 to him, and he says, this is nobody has ever talked about this. This is a pole shift. This is the earth reeling and rocking, all these things. And is Planet X, or Nibiru, or the binary system? Obviously, we've talked about this before, that it's going to go past us. It's not going to hit us, but as this thing goes by, it's shaking the heavens, isn't it? Is this what's causing this? How much time we got?
Not much, really, not much. You know what? I always keep this in mind, Pastor. People are going to be caught off guard, right?
Yeah.
And even mentioning Isaiah 24, I believe it's 24:18, it says, and shall come. I think it says now, you had to correct me on this, that people, if they run away from the noise, they're going to fall into the pit, which means they were caught off guard, Pastor Paul.
Yeah.
If you're running away, if you're hiding and doing all that, you did not know what was going to happen. So think about the predictions of people. People right now all over the world are concerned about what's happening, right?
Yep.
They have a projected time in their mind. But what no one is thinking about is that time is about to be collapsed a lot. And what I mean by that, it feels like, it seems like, mathematically, it looks like physics supports it, that we have, a handful of years left, maximum, right? Before the earth changes. Now, this is not to the end of the world, of course. This is until the earth changes. I firmly believe it's going to catch people off guard. Number one, nothing ever happens when the world is ready for it to happen. It's when the world is not paying attention. You know what that means? We're going to be involved in so many different things, either in a good way or not, but so many different things that our attention is certainly not going to be on the undoing of this planet. And by the way, that crack in the North Atlantic, that's the least of one of our worries, but it will certainly continue to crack in upthrust land here shortly, right? Nickel is coming up, but some very heavy materials are coming up. So it's going to catch people off guard. I've noticed something.
I'm reading your scripture. I'm reading your scripture.
Ahead,
you just quoted, and that's Isaiah 24, verse 18. You said, and it shall come to pass that he who fleeth from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit, and he that cometh up out of the midst of the pit shall be taken into a snare. For the windows from on high are opened, and the foundations of the earth do shake. This is a prophecy.
They weren't ready. Yep.
That has not happened yet. This prophecy in Isaiah 24, this is a prophecy of the end times apocalypse. It hasn't happened yet, Mike, but it's coming, isn't it?
It's coming fast. I believe the perturber is out there, Pastor Paul, is affecting everything, our planets and everything else. At the rate is starting to cause our orbits, like in the moon. They study the moon by way of lasers and positioning. The moon is gravitating to and fro from the earth a lot. It will, in 1.5 weeks, cause tidal problems. It's going to start causing tidal problems. The actual wobble, or this inconsistency of the moon, is almost like for all these years it's been maintained, and then all of a sudden it's somebody left out of the control center, because the moon has been stuck in a type of orbit perfectly with the earth all these years. One side faces us. Now its orbit is off in several points, and the moon is doing a little wicked shimmy. The earth is going to follow that, because we are tidal locked with the moon. If the moon shakes, our oceans will shift. They'll rise and they'll fall in different parts. And because our earth is changing, our axes of the earth is changing, then the mid-rim 200, what is it? That wall of water is pretty high.
Yeah,
the
huge.
rim of the earth is going to shift. Can you imagine if that shifted? If the earth tilted 5.5 degrees, that wall would go right through America.
What?
We would be underwater. Everybody else would some of the places that are underwater would be above water, and many of the places that are above water will be underwater. But that rim of water, if it changes, it could literally destroy. It could destroy an island. It could take out Australia, the U.S., because Australia is in proximity is almost equal size to the U.S. It could take out China and leave everything else alone. All it has to do is shift just a little bit, right? And but we're facing things like this. And by the way, the earth is tilting more and more.
Yeah.
But with that basketball, we have this external force that's changing. It's going to continue to change the magnetosphere and how it operates and how it flows. And it's just like anybody who studies electronics and they understand the proton electron theory. They understand resistors and capacitors and transistors and Kirchhoff's law and all this stuff and inertia. They can clearly see what's going to happen to the earth, because I believe that the Lord sets the time of the destroyer. You know, in Jeremiah, when he said the destroyer is on its way, and it was sent a long time ago. Well, they talked about that same destroyer in other times, in older times, and then in the cultures of this earth. This thing has been by us 4 to 5 times, and every single time it happens, it's just like having a baby, right? When you have a baby, the baby has to form and develop over time. Just like man, we seem to reach this point where we can make, aircraft and everything else based on historical data at the exact same time. So it takes us 1,000 years to get to that point, only 200 years to obliterate ourselves, right? So having a baby is the same way. Baby is in the womb 9 months. It forms in specific ways.
Yes.
So does mankind develop and evolve. And we're about to hit the point of high iniquity. This is what we're moving close to, because no one's satisfied with where they are. All anybody need to do is look within themselves and not satisfied with where they are. They need something else. And you know what, Pastor? Even the people that have been blessed severely, they're still complaining. And it's almost like the complaints are very high within a person. They're very difficult to control. And if it's not a complaint, it's an anger issue. If it's not that, it's something else. And there's no freedom from this turmoil that's happening inside. And the Bible says that when iniquity flourishes in the earth, it is because it's going to be removed forever. What I forgot if that was in Psalms or Proverbs, but it says the brutish man does not understand.
No,
they don't understand that. But what do we have here, Pastor Paul? We have iniquity at a very high level, and that is a marking that it's going to be destroyed forever. So we're looking at the end, right?
We're
just trying to see a better day, down the road. But we're looking at the end because man is very, very prideful and very brazen with everything he's doing.
Iniquity, when iniquity comes to a full, and I think that's where we're at. Jesus said,
I believe so too.
Because iniquity abound, the love of many will wax cold, and we're there. I mean, people hate each other. It's horrible. Mike,
go
ahead,
Pastor. In this time also, we have people are going to see with their eyes in the sky. They will see with their eyes in the sky the changing, a small deviation of the constellations. They will also see 2 new bodies sitting up in space. And I know they're going to explain this away, but I'm telling everybody
2 new
right
bodies.
now, when people see these 2 new bodies in space, right? Don't let anybody explain this away for you. These 2 bodies have been documented a long time ago. They will appear because they are the brightest, most, let's just say, hot objects of a specific system that's coming right for us, right? When we hit gravitational lock with these systems, then it's over. Then everything that we read about in the Bible, the plagues and everything else, one thing will lead to another. These things will happen all over the place. But our skies are about to change, and they know this, and they're trying to save face by dovetailing all these statements and comments and interests that Christians have. The government's talking about it now, right?
Yeah.
But the Christians bought it out, and they're trying to explain it like this alien stuff. You asked earlier, do we have people in the oceans? You better believe it. We have ancient people here on Earth that refuse to interact with humanity, and based on your environment, right? And as smart as they are, you can alter yourself. For example, right now there are people who have 3 ribs less than the average person. And they changed this themselves so they would have better mobility. There are other people, Pastor Paul, that they have changed their DNA in several aspects so they can breathe. They have very robust lungs, right? Very strong hearts, but small heads, right? They have small heads, but they have big lungs and big this, that, and the other. So they know all the triggers for the DNA. When they write these reports where they're peer reviewed, that's just what people have discussed of themselves. But governmental scientists and these, the industrial military complex, as it was spoken of, they did these experiments back in the times of Hitler. Hitler did everything that they're claiming they have a breakthrough with now. Just like, 1987, somebody came out and said, hey, they have a cure to cancer. They were not lying. They suppressed it. Nobody can find the medical people that were involved. Many of the microbiologists who deal with that subject, they're gone. It was a death of a lot of microbiologists in 87, going all the way up in 2011. A lot of microbiologists died also because they were finding evidence of how life was, handed together, and that it was designed, and it did not evolve, this, that, and the other, and they found some other things, but they just killed them off. So it leaves people in this questionary mode where they can deny everything, right? Call you stupid if you believe in the ancients or something like that, but too bad. Now people have to experience it. Now they're going to see it. But here's what's bad. When they see it, what are they going to do? I would suggest everybody get in the mindset of living in a post-meteoric world. All right, get ready for a meteor storm. First of all, August 17th, by the way, I forgot to tell you, August, not 17th, but August of this year, we have a pulse coming through.
August of this year.
That's August. That's next month. We have a pulse coming through. And I'm going to track down and get near to the days, but we have a pulse coming through. Right behind that pulse is the beginning of some little bitty rocks, right? Many of them will be laden with arsenic at first, but then the metal comes. It's the metal rocks that people are worried about now. Because if they start hitting that stuff we have in space, which has happened this month several times already, some satellites have been struck already, decommissioned. They've been put out of commission by rocks up there. And there's a lot of activity in the atmosphere.
Yeah, a lot of debris. And you've talked about this meteor storm that's coming. It's coming. And so let's not be shocked by, and they can't hide it forever. I've heard you say that.
No, they
August.
can't.
So August, we're going to have a pulse. We got 2 bodies coming, 2 celestial bodies in the heavens that can't be denied. Just saying, don't be shocked. Don't let anybody talk you out of it. They're going to try to tell us all kinds of stuff. Mike, one last thing. This has been a great program. I mean, unbelievable. The webinar coming up in 2 weeks. Aliens, angels, and demons. You have uncovered some stuff in this Aliens Underground that's just spinning people's heads right now. I know it is. What can you do? What will you tell us in that webinar? Don't tell me now, but are you going to give us some information that you can't say even here? I mean, is there some things you can go? Can you go further into this information?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know what? There's Pastor Paul, there's hours of conversation to be had just on the entity topic.
Okay.
So people have clarity, right?
All right.
Because even after that webinar, Pastor Paul, and there's going to be, from a pure biblical standpoint, I'm going to ask this question: how do we get people to become both comfortable and both familiar with the truth of what's been happening in the earth? Because I know a lot of people have a question: what are these things doing? And they have plenty of points of view, but I believe that the Bible was clear as far as what was going on, and through life experiences, that consistency is right there on the money. The problem is people are not, they're by no means expecting what's really coming. They're going to be blindsided because no one speaks about this. Everybody speaks about what's popular. Well, I can tell you something. There's subjects no one has spoken of because hardly anybody ever thinks about these things because they have not been exposed to it.
Yeah.
And how do we get to educate? How can you educate God's children so they, when you mention that word angels, they don't fall asleep or turn away.
Right.
When you mention the word demons or evil spirits, they don't just, brush you off, but to understand that they, on a moment-to-moment basis, people are dealing with these things, and a lot of people are losing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And That's hours of conversation. So if you want to put some things together in whatever form, just think about that. But I'd like to present with you after this webinar.
Yep.
Give you something, maybe a small recorded talk. You can gauge the audience or your whatever to see what the feedback will be, and we'll go from there.
All right.
Just to make sure it's useful for the
All
body
right.
of Christ.
We will do that. Thank you, Mike, once again, and appreciate it. We'll see you next Thursday, Lord willing. All right.
God bless you.
I'll have my phone.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. And I'll shut both my engines off. I think I had both my motor mouth engines going.
No, you were on fire. You were on fire. So keep with it. Keep them rolling. Great info. God bless you.
God bless you, Pastor Paul.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Mike around the world, folks. Fried my mind. I'll wait till Heidi analyzes this one. But there was some unbelievable information here. And also, we hit a record all-time largest crowd ever for a live broadcast, over 8,500 people at one point. I just want to ask you a question. You say, okay, Pastor, you guys are saying there's angels, there's demons, there's things, entities that's going to crawl out of the earth. Yeah, the Bible even says an angel, Apollyon or Abaddon, with the key to the bottomless pit is going to come and unlock it. And he's going to release creatures that you have never dreamed of. That's in the book of Revelation. People just really don't realize what's coming. He brought up the two bodies, the two celestial bodies coming. What is that? Is it wormwood? Is it Nibiru? Is it the blue Chechnya? I mean, what is all that about? We're waiting to see. But one thing's for sure, we're in the last days. If you want to be saved, I'm going to play a song. Just type, I want to be saved. Because you know what? There's no fear here. Jesus said, come unto me and I will give you peace. The peace I'll give you is not the peace that the world gives, but the peace I'll give you passes all understanding. People are already saying, I want to be saved. I'm going to let the moderators help me with this.